Hello everybody, and welcome back to a brand new video. Now, the other day I was looking through more of RuneScape's history, and I kind of stumbled upon some really unique accounts. Now, these accounts had items or levels that they really shouldn't have, and they were obtained via kind of a legacy mechanic. For example, there's an account with 10 defense and barrows gloves. Now, even in RS3, that's not really supposed to be possible. There is a minimum defense requirement just based on the quests required. However, this account was able to do that via a legacy mechanic that was a stat wipe for botting. Now, throughout RuneScape's history, there are a few other instances of accounts like this, and today I wanted to show you them. Now, these are going to range from a variety of timelines. One of these is from RuneScape Classic, one of them is from RuneScape 2 or RuneScape 3, and one of them is even from old school RuneScape. But anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, but before I get into it here, I just want to thank all of you for the 100,000 subscribers I'm going to be hitting probably tomorrow or the next day. It's an incredible achievement for me, one I never thought I would get, so I'm really excited. Now, for my 100k video, I was planning on just doing a face reveal and a Q&A. Nothing too exciting, but honestly it's something that I've been wanting to do for a while, and I think a lot of people will find interesting. So if you have any questions you want to ask me, leave a comment down below with your question, or you can hit me up on Twitter. You can email me if you want. But anyway, thanks again guys, and let's get started with the video. Okay, first up here we have a really interesting pure account type back from RuneScape Classic that kind of went forward into RuneScape 2, and that is called a plate pure account. Now, essentially what this account was is a character that had the ability to wear a rune chestplate with a magic level of 1. Now, nowadays that isn't that hard because you're able to pay Wormbrain 10,000 GP and he will give you the map piece to complete Dragon Slayer. However, back in RuneScape Classic and RuneScape 2, that option was not available, which means you needed the 33 magic requirement to equip a rune plate body. Now, this is where the plate pure accounts came in. Now, there's actually 3 different ways that players obtain this account. However, none of them are through normal means, and they're all obtained through a bug essentially, or maybe more of an oversight. Now, the first way this is possible, and probably the simplest, is when RuneScape Classic first made its debut, the map piece was actually just tradable, which means you could go ahead and start the quest, get the map piece on an account that had 33 magic, and then trade it over to your pure account after, thus getting rid of the magic level requirement on your second account. They could go ahead and complete Dragon Slayer, and now they would be a plate pure account. Now, as the game was so new and not a lot of players actually did this, by the time RuneScape 2 came around, there was probably only around 100 plate pure accounts, so they were really rare. However, with the release of RuneScape 2, there was actually a second way that players were actually able to create a plate pure, and now that it was on the radar, a lot of people jumped on this opportunity. During the RuneScape 2 trial, it was actually possible to trade your items from RuneScape 2 back to RuneScape Classic. So essentially what you would do is you log into RuneScape 2, kill Wormbrain, grab the map piece on RuneScape 2, and then for 1 week you're actually able to swap your items back to RuneScape Classic. An item was then tradable, which means you could trade it back onto your Classic Pure account, and then you would essentially have a plate pure. And the third way to get a plate pure account was to macro and have all of your stats reset to 1, however the quest would still be completed. Now, I find all of these accounts fascinating, but this one particularly was actually very useful and very popular. Being able to equip the rune plate body at a much lower combat level was actually really beneficial and were some of the strongest PKing accounts in that bracket. So they left behind a really interesting legacy. Nowadays, it's really easy to complete Dragon Slayer without the magic level requirements, so essentially there are no plate pure accounts left, or really everyone's a plate pure. It's still a fascinating piece of RuneScape history. Next up here we have a couple of different account types from the 2010 era, 2011, and these were again pure accounts that had 10 defense. Now, some of these 10 defense accounts were able to wear barrows gloves, which naturally have a defense requirement of 44 or somewhere around there. And additionally, some of these accounts even had access to ancient curses, for example, turmoil. Now again, these accounts were obtained via an exploit. Now, essentially the way it would work, now first up you needed to go ahead and get all of the skill requirements and quest requirements to complete, for example, Recipe for Disaster, or another strong option was to unlock the ancient curses. Now, once you had all of the requirements locked down, you then had to commit an offense, and a very popular way to do this was botting, because back then one of the punishments for botting was actually a stat wipe on your account. They would take away all of your items and reduce all of your stats to 10. And Jagex even stated that from this point on, if you use a macro or use a modified version of the RuneScape client, it is almost 100% certain that you will get banned or erased. Since these players gain the stats and items unfairly, we have unfortunately had no choice but to completely wipe the stats and inventory of approximately 2,000 people who have been caught using a macro or botting software. So back in 2010, this was a legitimate punishment, and at that point your stats would be reset to 10. However, your quests were not reset, which means you had all of the quest completions, for example, Recipe for Disaster, or in RS2, the Temple of Senenstin. Now in 2010, there was no backup requirement for Barrows gloves or ancient curses. It pretty much meant that you could equip Barrows gloves at 10 defense, or you could use the ancient curses once you had the required prayer level. Now these accounts were incredibly rare, incredibly overpowered, and some of them even sold for thousands of dollars. Now the reason these accounts were so rare is, well, jagex didn't use that punishment forever. Actually, it was for a fairly short period of time. After a while, they realized that they should just straight up ban the accounts and not just reduce their stats. But even today, there are remnants of accounts back from this era that are still alive and well. Now, what I find really interesting about these accounts is they were created intentionally. This wasn't something that happened by accident. For a while, players were actually purposefully leveling up their accounts and getting them banned. Now, this just didn't happen to a couple of accounts, it actually happened to hundreds, and players intentionally did it, either to sell the account or just to have a really strong pure account, which is really sneaky. I don't really think jagex understood what was happening for quite a while, which I mean is fair. There was a lot of mechanics going on in this game, so an oversight like that is possible. But that is how another large set of legacy accounts were created. Okay, finally here we probably have the rarest account on this list, and is actually from old school RuneScape. Now, I don't actually know if these accounts still exist, as I do think the majority of them were fixed. But I do still have kind of a sneaking suspicion that there could be a couple of one defense Barrows gloves accounts in old school RuneScape. Now, these accounts were not created intentionally. It was actually a sheer stroke of luck that some of these accounts were made. Now, here's what happened. Back in February of 2019, there was actually a bug with the auto-casting feature, which caused some accounts to get unwanted defense experience through no fault of their own. There was a temporary hotfix, and it was fixed pretty quickly. However, there were still a lot of accounts, specifically pure accounts, that were ruined because of this. But now, because this was a widespread issue, jagex actually decided they would go ahead and fix some of these accounts. This was actually one of the first times that jagex went ahead and tried to fix one of their errors, which I commend. However, they made another mistake whilst trying to fix their first one. Now, as you can imagine, most of the pure accounts were 1 defense pures, so jagex went ahead and started resetting accounts to 1 defense. However, as they were doing that, there were a few other mistakes made, and a few accounts that were not 1 defense pures actually had their defense reset to 1. Now here's a statement by Mod Gambit. We have identified all of the accounts that accidentally had their defense reset. This was caused by an unexpected error from looking at resetting the pure accounts affected by the XP bug a few weeks back. We can confirm that there were 24 accounts affected and that over half of them have already been fixed. We're going to reach out to the remaining 10 players via inbox messages and return the defense experience as soon as they are available. Now, because around 24 accounts had their defense reset by accident, those accounts were not pure accounts to begin with, which means some of them could be main accounts, some of them could be 50-60 defense accounts, and even some of them have completed Recipe for Disaster. Now, through this error, jagex essentially created probably the rarest pure account in history maybe, and while it is possible that all of them have been fixed, there was actually a Reddit thread that popped up a couple of months later showing that one was still in the game and had Barrows gloves equipped. So it really makes you wonder, how thorough were they at finding all of the accounts? Yes, they identified 24, but it is possible that more accounts were incorrectly reset. I mean, they probably could manually check all of the accounts that they reset and looked for any that had Recipe for Disaster completed. But still, I find this to be pretty funny and interesting. Even if all of the 1 defense Barrows gloves accounts are gone, for a short period, they were probably the rarest pure account and the rarest unintentional account in RuneScape's history. Alright guys, that is going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. I'm always on the lookout for more interesting tidbits from RuneScape's history. There's just so much out there, and the more I look, the more I discover. So if you have any other stories, feel free to leave them down below with a comment. Send me an email, Twitter, whatever. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks again for 100,000 subscribers, and I will see you next time.